There has been a video game for every proclivity in recent years. Whether you want to saddle on up and become a rootin'-tootin' cowboy roaming the Wild West for gold bars and horse-loving, or a rogue interplanetary space commander always down for a sexy alien romp. There's a world for everyone that you can invest countless hours into as you take on a whole new persona and lose yourself in creative bliss. That means, of course, there's also something for the strange collective of us that just want to scare ourselves silly in digitally designed nightmares too. And really, when you've got hairs to stand on end and a ready supply of socks to scare off, who has the time for 100-hour saves? One evening of terrifying trauma in something like Outlast is more than enough to get a taste of gaming's best horror titles. And truly, horror works best when it's an overwhelming, little explained experience with no time to spare for recovery. Just look at PT. So let's celebrate the titles that take only one night to leave a lasting impression, eh? Short doesn't always mean sweet, after all. I am the sleep paralysis demon, Ash from WhatCulture Gaming, and these are the 10 best horror games you can complete in one night. 10. Craven Manor. One of many freebies that grace this list, and proudly displaying independent horror at its finest, Craven Manor is a mystery to be unravelled in and of itself, whilst avoiding a creature that makes its home in its eerie walls. Delivering the same creepy vibe as Amnesia: The Dark Descent, Craven Manor capitalises on that gothic, haunted house horror that is a staple of the genre, and throws you straight into the heart of it. The short length, it runs about an hour give or take, makes for an experience that is mostly just exploring and surviving, with a few puzzles thrown in to jazz it up a bit. Atmospheric and unnerving, the comparison to Amnesia is fitting bar one key difference. This game makes you quite literally face your fears to stop them from overwhelming you, rather than running from them like any sane person would. Oh no. 9. One Late Night. We've all stayed longer than we intended to at the office. Whether it's to finish up some work or rifle through your colleagues' desks for leftover snacks, finding yourself all on your lonesome at work as the night rolls in is a particular brand of existential horror that is hard to replicate in media. But One Late Night manages it. Setting you up as a graphic designer who has stayed behind to work late, strange occurrences start cropping up that you need to get to the bottom of. Providing a lean hour of gameplay, One Late Night suitably sets you up in the mundane, everyday experience of an office worker before spiralling you straight into weirdness, forcing you to find clues to the truth and get the hell out of the spooky, locked building. It's one of those games that did the rounds on YouTube a while back, providing jumpy fun for all the family. So even if you don't play it yourself, there's a whole load of fun playthroughs you can consume instead too. 8. Killer Frequency. Channeling the vibes of horror movie Pontypool, Killer Frequency sees you play as a radio show host in a local town being terrorised by a knife-wielding maniac. With callers ringing in asking you to save their lives as they're hunted by a slasher, you have to make quick decisions as to what they should do, keeping up to date on news bulletins, road closures, and other tidbits around the studio to ensure you can guide them to safety. It's busybody work, yes, but better to be busy stemming the pile of bodies than added to their number, surely. Killer Frequency's specific style of tense horror and lick of comedy is born from conversation, and the creeping dread that wrong decisions could result in condemning your callers to having their last words broadcast live on air. Impressively built in 2 weeks for Adventure Jam 2019, this is half an hour that sends you back to the glory of 80s slashers and plops you right into the heart of the game. Think you'd make the smart choices in a horror movie? Why don't you find out? 7. Eerie. Tasked with investigating a meltdown at a power generator that has resulted in some strange occurrences and suspicious disappearances, you head out to a small Michigan town to find out what on earth is causing such a ruckus. Whilst finding survivors is paramount to begin with, you soon learn that it is your own survival that's at stake here, with malicious, mutated enemies lurking in the darkness. Eerie isn't the most technologically advanced title, but it does have a mean little story in there that's worth hunting out. It's a title developed by students and made by those that care about the spooky little gem they've sent out, as can be seen by the endlessly horrifying monster that stalks the underground. Sadly, its 40 minutes of horror are no longer accessible as the distributor shut down, but that doesn't mean it can't rear its ugly head elsewhere should another company find a home for it. 6. Man of Medan. If you've taken a hike through the grim mountains of Until Dawn, then it's only right to take a dip in the haunted seas of Man of Medan, the first entry into the Dark Pictures anthology from Supermassive Games. Coming in at roughly 5 hours, this spooky tale sees a group of 5 playable friends head out into the ocean to find sunken treasure. But they get a whole lot more than they bargained for in the process. Typical, eh? With strange apparitions and tensions running high between characters, managing to keep all of them alive feels like a fine art, with small choices making big impacts later on in the game. What makes this such a great horror title for an evening is that it comes in 3 playstyles, with solo gaming, online co-op, and local co-op all coming together so you can pick and choose how you experience this salty tale of scares. 5. Five Nights at Freddys. Notorious for its jump scares and found all across the internet for its horror show depiction of children's mascots gone rogue, Five Nights at Freddy's puts you in the probably very sweaty shoes of a security guard with the sole job of defending himself from lively animatronics intent on tearing him apart. Said animatronics are a fun feature of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza restaurant by day, and deadly machines of mangling death by night, who attack humans they see as costumeless endoskeletons that need stuffing into their own suit. Well, if that opening gambit isn't nightmare fuel enough, then buckle yourself in for a night of palpitations. These stuffed stuffers will get the best of you yet. There's a reason Five Nights at Freddy's continues to be an absolute blast even now, and that is the incredibly simple, jumpy formula it employs to great effect. Even leveling that up with VR, because sadism. 4. Resident Evil 3 Remake. Disappointingly short for some, refreshingly snippy for others, the Resident Evil 3 remake is a thing of beauty either way, despite Nemesis's ugly mug getting plastered all over the damn thing. Your goal is to escape Raccoon City before it becomes overwhelmed by an infectious disease turning its inhabitants into zombies, aiding one Ms. Valentine in a mission to avoid being pasted across the pavement into Jill Sandwich filling. Nemesis doesn't play nice after all, and will render her down into something far finer than a simple BLT. The Resident Evil 3 remake clocks in at most at a healthy 6 hours, but this can be shaved down to a few hours or less if you get a fire under your cheeks and power through. Running from old Nemi should provide ample fuel to do so, considering his probing with deadly tentacles is enough to get anyone who has heard the word hentai into a fluster. With all sorts of mutated horrors, some gnarly gore, and jump scares aplenty, Resi 3 Remake scratches an itch for veteran fans and newbies alike. 3. What Remains of Edith Finch. Now, this title isn't so much a horror game as a horror-adjacent one, with a creepy, foreboding sense of dread permeating everything within its beautiful pixel walls as you wander through Edith Finch's old home. Here, she waxes lyrical about her family and growing up under what many of them believe to be a hereditary curse, one that kills the Finches in elaborate, unseemly ways far beyond their natural time. Each family member has their own scenario to see through, with one in particular of interest to hardcore horror fans in the form of a pulpy comic strip narrated by a Pumpkinhead knockoff. This is a touching exploration of both what makes a life and how the ripples of untimely deaths affect the branches of a family tree, and feels like a deeply personal insight into death of every kind. Nothing is shied away from to do with the topic, whether it be missing children, harrowing accidents, or suicide, and each is handled with the utmost wholesome care. What Remains of Edith Finch won't scare you silly, but it will leave a lasting impression far worth enduring its relentlessly unsettling atmosphere for. 2. Blair Witch. One of the longer titles on this list, Blair Witch will probably take about 6 hours off you to complete. But how realistic that number is depends entirely on how advanced you are at wandering through a repeating, dark forest with few identifiable landmarks whilst battling a nasty feeling that something is watching you. I can say from personal experience, it is a lot harder than it sounds. Blair Witch takes all the fun of the films and transposes them onto a game that both updates the story and revels in its nihilistic weirdness, following former police officer Ellis and sniff extraordinaire Bullet, who is a dog, just in case that wasn't clear. Your goal is to find a missing child, but any kids not coming when they're called in a forest known for paranormal disappearances is probably best left to it. Ellis disagrees, however, and is relentless in his pursuit of what is right. So, we're taken on a creepy, twisted tale with the best homage ending anything in the Blair Witch franchise could ever hope to put out. It is dreary, it is weird, and it will leave a bad taste in your mouth. All selling points here, I promise. 1. Oxenfree. If you're after the most realistic, immersive dialogue you can get in a game, then Oxenfree is absolutely for you. Following a group of teens that meet up on a largely deserted island for a bit of out-of-hours fun, the group ends up discovering far more than they bargained for when they happen across voices that aren't from this world. The whole way through, these characters are conversing in natural, breezy ways, not ever giving in to shoehorned and awkward exposition, and instead mimicking the reality of conversation, speaking over each other, making bad jokes, and sounding genuinely invested in this strange phenomenon surrounding them. It doesn't sound like much, but in a game dictated by personality, it goes a long way to solidifying this as a charming and engaging title. Influenced by the coming-of-age story we know all too well, this is a touching tale of deliciously spooky creation, and boasts a whole range of endings depending on your choices throughout the story. And, importantly, Oxenfree is not going to eat up too much of your life with only 4 hours of gameplay. Lovely.